Okay. I think we should start. People are still joining, but let them make their way. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I am Nizam, and this session is the monthly Prolaborate training / workshop that we are trying to do to give a heads up to all the current and prospective Prolaborate users on what are the possible ways they could get the best out of the software. So I really appreciate you joining in good numbers. We are seeing more than 40 people here, and this is a monthly training that we have planned, and this is the second instance of it, and we'll keep doing it every month, hopefully, as long as there is interest. I mean, even if there is a few participants, we'll try to do this. The whole idea is that people make a lot of investment and time to avail these software, but we notice that a lot of these goes sort of not used to its best capacity, rather used in its surface. And we wanted to encourage people to know what are the possibilities and see how they can get the best out of the software in their current implementation. So mostly targeted towards current EA and Prolaborate users to know more about the software. So this session, as much as I would like to keep it as an interactive session, there is a good number of people here. If there is something that I'm really missing and I'm not very clear, please feel free to ask. But if there are questions that you want me to address, we have planned for a half-hour session towards the end, where we can go through some of these questions, or you could also reach us with your questions in an email, and we'll be more than happy to follow up on that as well. Okay, so just want to confirm that A, I am audible, and B, my screen is visible. So if someone could please confirm you're able to see my screen and I'm audible, that'd be great.
Yes, Nizam.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. For sure, I can see some really familiar names, so yeah, it makes me nervous. Thank you. So we'll start. So I am Nizam, and I've been with Sparx Systems for a little over 17 years now. I've been working in different capacities. Started my early stages of career as a developer there, and then I've been doing consulting for most of my life. So have some key roles in different things that Sparx does, like including Prolaborate and the cloud offerings and some of the consulting practices across the world. So I can say I know a little bit about Sparx Systems and its products and have some good experience implementing it. And today's agenda, so it's going to be a 2.5-hour session and a 30 minutes Q&A. I know it's a lot of time and commitment from people, like to shelve like 3 hours from your day. These sessions are recorded, and the recording will be made available to you as well. So if you have meetings that you have to drop out for and resume like that, please feel free to do so. And the video will ensure you have the continuity. And I'm trying to plan this in the following way. So we'll have an overview of the Sparx products. So there are a couple of things in this ecosystem now, and I would like to give an overview of that. And then a quick intro to why we even came with an idea of Prolaborate and what are the key use cases that we are intending to solve. And then in the following sessions, we'll just take 4 key use cases that Prolaborate was intended for, and go through in details and the features in Prolaborate that will help us achieve those use cases. So that will be focus, improving focus of your non-EA users to get the best feedback from them, and to also present it in a simpler way. So these two are the crux of it. And then we have the curation use case, which is more about translating all the complex relationships and tag values and model hierarchies and things like that we do in an EA model into something that's intuitive and simple to understand for, again, non-EA users. And then in the last session, we'll have an advanced impact analysis feature that is in Prolaborate. And then we'll go through the reviews and feedbacks and collaboration use case. And then we'll have a quick gist of what is in 4.3. So that's the agenda for today. To start with, the products or the components in the Sparx suite, I think most of us will be aware of enterprise architect. So just some assumptions that I would take through the session is most of the people here, I expect, will be aware of enterprise architect or would have some experience working in enterprise architect. So you have a fair bit of understanding of models and the relationships and the complexities involved in creating an architecture model. I wouldn't go too technical into it, but I would assume a little bit of understanding. And then I would also assume that you will know some of the pain points that we come across when working on an enterprise architecture or a solution architecture model, and the ways we could address. So that's what I'll be focusing on, the ways we could address some of those pain points. So enterprise architect is the crux of this whole platform, and that's the modeling tool which supports all the OMG standards, and it is quite a multifaceted modeling tool, as we know, and most people are aware of. And then there is also a PCS component. This name has always been quite interesting because people assume different things looking at the name. But what it is essentially is a REST API layer that allows us to integrate. So it is the integration layer that allows us to plug with external tools like Jira's and ServiceNow's and Confluences and Doors, which has become almost inevitable in the current architecture landscape. When we deploy an enterprise level application, this hardly goes without integrating with the rest of the application. So this has become a need of an hour. And then Prolaborate, which is a web-based sharing and collaboration portal. The whole idea is to take all the modeling that we have done using Enterprise Architect and present it to people who are non-EA users, which is an important and essential part of an enterprise architecture practice's success. Because as I mentioned previously, I've been doing EA modeling and consulting for a good part of my career, and this is a bottleneck almost in every deployment. We do all the hard work, we put in all the time and effort to come up with some really interesting models, but then we go try to engage the people who has to look at it and give us the approvals, and they'll say, can I get this in a PowerPoint? And that will be the most disappointing thing to hear. So, we were kind of hitting this snag almost in every serious project. I'm talking about serious projects. If someone's intention is just to draw a couple of UML diagrams, I think Enterprise Architect is a great tool. Jira, Visio is even a better tool if it is only for diagrams. But when we talk about an architecture practice, where there's a governance, where there is architects who are committing to update it and maintain it, we really need the wider community to participate. So that is where Prolaborate came into picture. And so that's an intro to what are the suite of products that we are talking about. And then another thing I would like to emphasize before jumping on to Prolaborate and its use cases is, as I said, I'm assuming a fair bit of seriousness and commitment towards an enterprise architecture practice or a solution architecture practice or a system engineering practice. Anything to do with a modeling tool requires some commitment, some governance, some process and approvals and checkpoints and review gateways. So gate points. So those are kind of expected for a serious practice to be in place. And my take on it to set up a enterprise architect based practice is this. So there is a small workflow that we always recommend to users, and most of them follow this. It may not be put out in a flow chart like this, but they almost go through these phases when they roll out an EA practice. some of these boxes here could vary, but the top, 3 boxes are in, like, it's almost mandatory. And if someone hasn't done this, they would hit an even bigger problem of adoption and inconsistency and lack of a coherent view. So what these are, like, most people, at least the new users that I come across in the Sparx world, they try to download Enterprise Architect and start working on it, which is good. Like, EA allows us to do it. But if you want to scale up a practice and make it, reach to a wider modeling community, so I'm talking about reaching to a wider architects community, let alone going to the non-EA community. So to go, so we to go in to before going into the modeling, we need to really understand what are the use cases that we are trying to solve. So without having a clear understanding of the use cases we are trying to solve, starting with a modeling tool is not the best thing. And once we understand the use cases, it could be something like, I would like to do my application portfolio rationalization. I want to do a capability mapping. I would like to do my process mapping. I would like to do my solution architecture. I would like to do my requirements. It could be anything, but we need to understand what is my focus, because EA out of the box offers 100 different frameworks with like number of diagrams and toolboxes and object types that you could work on, and that's enough to discourage or overwhelm people who are new to modeling and make them go back to Visio. So it's just a it's overwhelming when someone just starts with EA and tries to figure out a diagram to work on it. Rather, if someone who knows it, who's driving this practice, could understand the use cases and then come up with a meta model that kind of summarizes or answers all the key use cases, that will be the first starting point. So this is a different topic. We have presentations on this, we have materials on this, but I just want to give a heads up because this is important as a first step before going into really getting the benefits out of anything like an integration or Prolaborate. So what I'm saying here is just a quick intro, but if you would like to know more, happy to share additional information along these lines. But meta model definition is, this is just a sample, but here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to identify artifacts across the business, application, information, and technology layers that I would need in my architecture repository. I am zeroing on the connectors between them. So these could be Archimate based, these could be UML based, this could be derivation from UML. It's up to you or the architecture team to finalize on what they would like to achieve. But if you zero in on the type of objects that you intend to use, the connectors that you would like to use in between, the tagged values or the additional metadata that goes with each of these artifacts, the colors, the look and feel, you could standardize on all those at a meta model definition, which will then help us come up with some standardized configurations in EA, including toolboxes and quick linkers and validations and governance. So that will make the job of the other architects incredibly easier, because this is the hard part where a lot of thought process should go. And if done once and if done right, you could expect the rest of the team to just get a Visio-like experience, but they will end up creating models that are consistent, adhering to the standards that you wanted. They will have all the metadata that you require, and these metadata and connectors are what is going to help you drive some insights from the model. So, I'm stating this as almost like a prerequisite for a practice to be set up before going into anything like Prolaborate. Again, as I said, I am quickly, giving a heads up to this. But if you'd like to know more about it, happy to share additional information along those lines. So now, once we have a good EA practice, when I say a good EA practice, I'm not talking about really elaborate, fully implemented TOGAF based repository or an Archimate based repository. That's not what I'm referring to as a good EA model. I'm talking about the leanest, the simplest meta model that you could all agree and create some models that are consistent. And the connectors are consistent, the object types are consistent, the tag values in them are consistent. that's when you will start focusing on how do I get the insights from these model information that I have in a common repository by inviting people to look at it. Let's say you have an application inventory in your Sparx models. If you know the application is going to be connected to a L2 capability via an association connector. If you know that an application is going to be connected to a business process, like an activity in a business process, using an association connector or a dependency connector. If you know exactly what are my interconnections in my meta model, then you would invite people to come and comment on the application inventory by looking at it, understanding the capabilities that it solves, the processes that it supports, the infrastructure that it's hosted on, the data centers that it's connected to. So these are the kind of insights that you want the non-EA users to understand. But before getting into anything like that, we need the model to be consistent and kind of reflecting what your use cases are. So that those are the first few steps. And once that's done, Prolaborate comes into picture where we can take a really complex architecture repository. So the reason I'm using complex is because an architecture repository is intended to be that central repository where multiple teams, multiple projects, multiple programs work together by sharing information from a common inventory, by reusing artifacts across multiple viewpoints, multiple phases of your projects. And the moment we start engaging teams do something like that, you're going to see a much more complex architecture repository than like a simple diagramming utility. So that the complexity is the inherent nature of it, but that's containing all the key insights that you would like to drive. And that's when Prolaborate's features or the value of Prolaborate comes into picture. So first thing is, from such a complex intertwined kind of a model, how do I get or share selected parts of the model to the intended audience? So your intended audience wouldn't really care about the number of projects that are working on it, number of programs that are updating it. All they would care is the selected set of use cases that they want to get an answer for. And Prolaborate will help you simplify and let them focus on exactly the contents that is of interest to them. And then it will also help us present them in reports and charts and dashboards, which are almost tailor-made based on use cases and personas. And furthermore, you will be able to have absolute control on what gets shown, what can be edited. So it has a very granular access control. Like, just to give you an example, if I take an application from my application inventory and it has, let's say, a handful of tagged values, let's say it has some 10 or 12 tagged values, you don't want all the tagged values to be shown to all the users. Or let's push this a little more. You want to show those metadata, but you don't want people to edit everything. You want the project teams to update its life cycle, for example. You want the BAs to maybe add some risks to it, or some projects that are impacting those applications. So you want selected teams to work on selected use cases on the same inventory. Prolaborate's granular access control and role-specific views will help us achieve that. So each of these have been introduced to solve a key pain point. So another thing that we tried to do, so I have a fair bit of say on how Prolaborate's products are designed. So I do the product management for Prolaborate, and one of the things our team follow is we will refrain from introducing a feature unless there's a strong use case for it. We rather than having a sell feature that just helps us say, there is a feature and we don't know the exact use case or why it's being used, we will go the other way around. We will try to understand the use case thoroughly before even implementing something. So we will not have fancy features coming in every new release, but we will rather focus on user experience, simplification, and making it easier to use. So that's the theme in Prolaborate's development. So each of these features or capabilities that I'm going to show will be to answer or to address some key pain points. And as I said, in this session, we'll be particularly focusing on 4 use cases for enterprise architect users. So this is for the modelers, for the architects who are using enterprise architect and who has that responsibility to manage this model and engage or take it to the non-EA users to continue getting feedback from them or letting them edit it in a controlled manner, or sharing it or providing a knowledge base to the entire organization based on some model. So there are several use cases for architects, and we have just taken 4 key use cases, and we'll be starting with focus. So what is focus? Why do we need this particular feature? As I said, most of the models are highly loaded, so there will be very comprehensive. There will be a number of diagrams, number of projects, number of programs, folders, packages, sub packages in a model. And when we want to target external stakeholders and show them something, we don't want to show the inherent complexity in it. So we definitely want to show or hide the contents in a particular way based on whom we are targeting. And then not all contents in the model are going to be relevant to the stakeholders. There could be work in progress. There could be things that are confidential. There could be things that are archived. You don't want to show the entire repository to everyone. We can achieve all this without Prolaborate as well. So the answer we used to revert to was document generation. So we used to generate Word documents and PDF documents from model based on customized documentation templates, which was helping us solve this problem. But the flip side of that is it's still a document. It's a static view. And the moment the document is generated, it's obsolete. Like the models will change, the documents wouldn't. So, documents are good, but with almost every organization moving towards Confluences and SharePoints, which is all digital documents, generating a PDF and Word is kind of becoming an old school thing. Like I wouldn't say not used at all. It's still a key thing to use, but a more real time and live way to achieve these goals is what we try to do. And a quick example is an architecture model could have information pertaining to client management, supply management, product management, and we are trying to target 3 different teams. What Prolaborate would help us do is pick and choose packages from the bigger repository and just show them what is relevant to them. So this is just to explain how we could solve, eliminating things that are irrelevant to a team and just show them what is needed. So that's the better focus use case that we are talking about. And to achieve that in Prolaborate, this question almost appears every time, and there is an answer in EA for this as well, but that is done through I don't even remember, row level security. To be honest, I haven't tried it, but if someone has succeeded, that's well and good. But that's very technical and very detailed. Like someone needs to be really tech savvy to be able to get that done. But what Prolaborate's answer for that is, you could see the entire repository and just pick and choose contents from the repository that becomes part of your project. So just drag and drop contents from your EA repository into your Prolaborate project, and that becomes your Prolaborate project. Everything else that are not included in here is completely hidden or removed from Prolaborate projects. So this is step 1, choosing which part of the model you would like to include. And the second, even more granular way of refining who gets access to what is through access controls. So specifying access permissions. You could have different groups configured in Prolaborate, or you could have your SAML and Active Directory groups linked to Prolaborate. So again, we are targeting enterprise grade deployments, and user management at an application level is also becoming a thing of the past. Like, most of the companies, especially after COVID, are against maintaining users in applications or users at application level. So we have seamless integrations with your SAML or Active Directory, kind of a federated authentication IDPs, and you could have your groups managed in your external ID providers and assign them to these packages. So depending on who gets access to which package, they will see, I mean, the project browser will reflect accordingly. So if I choose application domain and I give access only to the APM team, strategy team, the other teams wouldn't even see this package in their project browser. So that's the key here. There's a big stark difference from this and the way we are used to in the enterprise architect. The enterprise architect is read or write. So you could enable editing or disable editing. You cannot remove contents from the package or the project browser, because that's the intention or the use case of an enterprise architect model is everyone should see the entire repository so that they could reuse it and maintain it. But Prolaborate, it's about getting better focus and also not showing things that are irrelevant to teams. So you could just select a package and assign a group to it, and that is pretty much like the configuration that we need to do. And when someone who is part of an APM team logs in, they only get to see application domain. So sections and access permissions are the first two steps that we do when we configure a project. And now, just taking a step back, I'm going to bring in my Prolaborate screen. So this is, I'm just having my Prolaborate instance here. And the first thing is some of our users still don't have the clarity on what is the relation between an EA project and a Prolaborate project. And the answer to that is it's the same repository. So I have one central EA repository in which I am creating my models. And what I do is, we usually have a cloud connection or a PCS based connection using which we connect to the repository. And Prolaborate uses the same PCS connection to connect to your EA repository. So there is no intermediate storage, or there is no extra additional buffers or publishing that we need to do. This is connecting to the EA models that we connect using enterprise architect. So it's pretty much using two interfaces to access the same repository. So the connection between an EA project and Prolaborate project is pretty much straightforward. We connect to the same repository through a web browser, but then what makes it different is the way we configure the project views and access permissions. So the first step is I connect to an EA repository and I get the project loaded here, and the immediate next step is configuring sections. So when you add a new project in Prolaborate, it kind of takes care of all this automatically, unless you want to customize it and change it. So this, for example, you could see this is the EA project browser. So I'll just see if I have my EA open. So this is I'm just showing both my EA repository and the Prolaborate at the same time. Both are connected to the same SQL Server based EA database. And you could see this is the entire project browser here, which I am able to see using Prolaborate as well. But to configure my Prolaborate project, I just drag and drop contents from here into my, so I just drag and drop and reorder to make my Prolaborate project. So things that I haven't included here will not be shown to anyone. There are some edge cases here. So there are some nuances here. For example, if there is an item that is connected to a diagram or an element in these packages, we will show that there is a connection, but we will not allow the users to delve into it or to dig into it. So that's the edge case here. But in in a gist, these packages are removed from the Prolaborate project, and the next step is configuring access permissions. And this is where it gets even more interesting, because as I said, depending on which group I am giving access, the people who belong to this group will only see the packages and the contents that are from these packages. So APM team and strategy team is what I've given for application domain. For business domain, I think it's pretty much the same. Just see if so for I've configured the same for pretty much. So here in the requirement side, I've got the BPM team. So if I am part of an APM team, I mean application portfolio team, and I log in, I will not even see these requirements and use cases, because this is more for the business process or BAs. So depending on which team I belong to, the packages will be shown, and the packages also, the access permissions could be different. So for strategy team, I've only given read and collaborate access. But for the APM team, I've given the read, write, and collaborate access. And what's the difference here? So someone who is from the APM team will be able to edit the model contents, again in a controlled manner, which I'll come to in a moment. But someone from strategy team will only be able to see those properties and comment on it and participate in reviews and things like that. So this is a very simple and quick way to set up access control. But there are also organizations who say, I don't want to care. I mean, we can't be bothered about all these groups and configurations. We just want to provide a single access to everyone. That's also possible. The sections will allow you to eliminate contents entirely from Prolaborate project, and then you give single access. Everyone in your teams, I mean, in your organization will get the same access when they visit Prolaborate. So these are the first two steps to help us eliminate things or share things that are only relevant or that are only intended to be included for the particular stakeholders that you are targeting. So that's about the simplifying or the focus use case. So that's the first step we wanted to solve. So again, a little bit of background. This was becoming a serious, a major concern in many places. We used to have HTML publish. It's still there. It's not used to. We still have the HTML publishes. And when we do an HTML publish of the model, yes, you could tailor it to a small set of packages, but in most cases, what organizations used to do is to publish the entire package and share it in a common location. And those were giving access to the entire package hierarchy and all the contents in the packages, which was deemed to be overwhelming for people, and it was also confusing for people when they try to access and get information that is important to them. They'll be bombarded with a number of other things which are work in progress or things that are not intended to be shown. So that was our main primary use case that we wanted to solve. And the next use case is simplifying it. So now that we have eliminated contents that shouldn't be shown, out of things that we want to show, that's we need to make it much more simplified than what an architect can understand. Just to illustrate the problem I'm trying to address, so I will just take a BPMN business process. I think most of us would know BPMN. It's one of the commonly used EA diagrams. If I take a BPMN activity and just click on it, or double click on it, I get the properties window. For a person who is comfortable with EA, this screen, you will be comfortable with this screen. But we have seen or tried to bring new people to use it, and the first impression will be what am I looking at? Because it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different property sheets with 4 different tabs, and each tab is having a million tag values associated with it. Now, what am I supposed to focus on? Like, what am I supposed to review? Okay, fine. I understand there is a description, but what are all these fancy things that are being shown here? These are the kind of feedback we get when we try to invite people to look at it. So we realized we need to simplify this in a way that even a person who is looking at it for the first time should be able to get the right piece of information or the model detail that they have to benefit from. So that is where the simplification use case pain point was manifested. I'll just take the application inventory as well. So I have an application inventory in my project. This is again, this is a different webinar we have given on how to do an application inventory and application portfolio using Sparx. There's a webinar that's available in YouTube as well, if you would like to see. I've got a set of ServiceNow imported applications and a set of applications that I modeled locally. But for this session, I'm just going to quickly show you. If I want to understand this application in detail, I really need to know, I have to go to the tags and then look at these in details rather than trying to find the information in the advanced tab or the main tab or requirements, constraints, scenarios, files tabs. We really need to know where to go and what to look for, even to understand an application inventory. Rather, if you give them something that's really intuitive, easy to use, and it gives them all the information in one click, that would be a better user experience. And that's what the simplify use case is all about. So what we thought, firstly, we want an ability to show or hide relevant attributes. Like I mentioned, BPMNs and UMLs and any other standards, you could come up with a whole raft of tag values that are part of a stereotype. So when you have a stereotype added to your diagram, it could come up with like BPMN, a million tag values associated with it. But you should have an ability to configure the form that the user gets to see. So that is one of the main pain point. And the second pain point is granular access control. So I want my project teams to update my application. So in the architecture practice, it's one thing to build a model, and it's another, entirely bigger problem to maintain the model. Because I have seen, and most of you might agree, we have reverted back to Excel spreadsheets once again to invite people to give us an updated information. So if I want to get an updated data for the life cycles or the security classifications, most people would never come to EA to update it. They would rather do it in Excel, and it's a maintenance nightmare for us to update the repository once again. So we want people to update the model, but we don't want them to go all out and try to do unwarranted or unprecedented changes. You want to have a controlled way so that they could only update the life cycle rather than updating anything else. So that was another key pain point that we wanted to solve. So that's the granular access control at an attribute level, not at an element level, not at a package level, but at an attribute level. And then we also understood it's not one form. It's not one form for all the personas. It could be an IT SOM, it could be a project manager, it could be a BA, it could be a tester, it could be different roles in your organization, and they would want their own way, their own details to be updated. Everyone has to update, everyone has to contribute to build a model, but in a controlled manner. So we want to have role-specific views, and all these combined is what we have done in the simplify use case. So this is again going back to what I showed you already. So a BPMN activity or an element with a set of tag values. These are all the hidden details in a model that we want to bring or surface it so that people could easily comprehend it and make use of it. And that's where the font designer of EA comes into picture. There is again a bit of background here. A good EA practice is mostly associated with a custom profile or an MDG. most of the standardized practices will have an MDG defined for themselves, where the core team, the core architects would have done the hard work. They would have identified all the types and stereotypes that they would like to model, and they would have assorted all the tag values or the metadata that goes with it, and they would have packaged it all in an MDG technology. So what we thought, rather than reinventing the wheel, we will just take the MDG as our starting point and publish it here. So if you have your own MDG, for example, you could just import it into Prolaborate, and the definitions of your MDG. I'm sorry if I'm sounding too technical for a few people here. If you're not aware of all these MDGs and configurations, don't worry about it. If you need more information, we can share you additional information later on. But this is for people who are kind of aware of it and who are doing it. If you just import your MDG, the forms will automatically show up. All the configurations of your EA profile will be shown here with the stereotypes and the respective tag values. However, if you are not having one of those, if you are using Archimate, if you are using UML, if you are using BPMN out of the box, and you have some custom metadata or tag values defined in your EA repository, that's fine as well. The form designer will let you drag and drop and design a form for a particular type. So it's all defined at a particular artifact type, because it's not one form fits all. A BPMN activity has a different metadata, and an Archimate application component could have a different metadata. A UML class would have a different metadata. So this is done at an element or an artifact level. And the form designer, again, it's not about writing scripts. It's not about writing queries. It's a drag and drop to quickly design forms. And then you can assign these forms to specific users and user groups, so that if I am assigned a form and I'm part of an application group and I am given a form to edit the task type and the efforts alone, I'll be able to only see that. Okay, so we'll see how these forms are done in a moment. So that's part one. So just eliminating all the tag values and attributes. And the second thing is about what you show to them in their first impression. But I'll just show a demo of the form designer very quickly. And this is an example. So if I see the same activity using Prolaborate, and BPMN activity only shows the name, its description or documentation, the applications that are connected to it, the cost associated with it, and efforts. I mean, these are just examples, but this kind of represents a standard expectation out of a BPMN activity. And what you will also see here is only the documentation and the task type and the efforts is editable. The applications, the cost, and the name is not editable. So the access control at an attribute level is kind of shown here. So a person with such permissions, such access control, will be able to click on an activity, edit its documentation, update its efforts, and save it, which will in turn go and update the model. So you are bringing in more people to participate in model creation and maintenance, at the same time giving them in a very controlled manner. And what you are seeing here is either connected elements or ref GUID. I don't know how many people have used that in EA, but the ref GUID and the ref GUID list is one of the most useful reference mechanisms in Sparx EA. But the way it's displayed kind of underplays its significance. What we have done is we have actually kind of brought that to the main, to the forefront, given it the significance that it deserves. So if you look at an object here, you'll be able to click on it and navigate to it and look at its details. So the ref GUID items or the connected items is all shown in a platter. So click, look at this details, update if you need, and save. And that's the user experience that we are envisaging for our users. Okay, so I'll just quickly show, or maybe we'll take a break. I think it's, no, we have a few more minutes. I'll just quickly show a demo of this, how to simplify using the form designer, and then we'll probably go for a break. So I've got I'll start with enterprise architect once again. I've got an Archimate. So in this example, I'm intentionally using a out of the box MDG rather than using my own custom MDGs. So I'm using Archimate application component, and to do this, I've captured a few tagged values like against it, like business unit, cost, health indicator, life cycle, security classification, so on and so forth. And what each of these are, like for people, again, I'm getting a little technical here, please bear with me, but these are all tagged values that has a proper definition in EA. So I've got, if I take life cycle, for example, it's an enum with production, sunset, UAT as the different set of values that it can have, so that there's a drop down. So it's all defined in EA. I'm not trying to reinvent. We are not trying to suggest that, you need to do everything again in Prolaborate. All you need to do is you have a list of tagged values that you have defined. You just have to export these tagged values using export reference data, and Prolaborate will allow you to import into Prolaborate, like import all the tagged values into Prolaborate. And then what you have to do is all the MDG technologies, we call it modeling languages because it's almost a nightmare to explain what an MDG is to a non-EA user. So, the simplest we could think of, a modeling language, and Archimate, BPM, and Prolaborate is all the UML stuff. So these three are the ones I'm using in my model. I'm not using anything else. So I've removed all the other MDGs. So it's again simplifies it further. But in Archimate, this is out of the box from Sparx EA, so you don't have to do anything. You just get into it and you can start defining your own forms for it. So there is one default profile, but you can create any number of profiles and assign it to different user groups. As I said, it's not one form or one experience for everyone. Every persona, every user group could have their own experience. But to start with, I'm stepping into the default profile, and I can see all the types that are in Archimate shown to me. And then this is application component, which I've used for my application inventory modeling. And I'm just clicking on form designer. And what this shows me is all the standard EA properties that you will see. Like, again, I'm going to compare with EA every time so that you can relate to it. So there are some standard properties like, the version and priorities and phases and complexity. Those are the standard properties. We don't use a lot of them in custom modeling, like, in architecture modeling, but for whatever it's worth, like we have those listed here, which you could drag and drop as well. Or alternatively, if it is BPMN or some MDG, which by default prescribes all the tag values, it will be shown in the technology property. So if I am looking at the BPMN activity, it will be having all its metadata listed here. But because I am using Archimate, which doesn't go into the metadata level, but I have defined them in EA and I have imported them here. So I've got all the properties shown here. And what I could do is I could just, take, let's say, strategic importance and just drag and drop. And that becomes my form here. So this is the form that my end users will get to see. And in this form, what you see here is a mix of basic attributes or the basic properties and all the custom metadata that I want my end users to see. Another, this is again getting into the nuances here, but this one word may not be sufficient for a non-tech user to understand what this means. So it gives you an option to add more help text if required. This just takes the user experience factor and lets the architect do whatever is required to make it easier for the end users. And once they design a form, they can then determine which of these properties should be editable or readable. So just read only. This, again, it's not overwriting any of your EA controls. You could have access controls set up in EA which will say this package is non-editable. There's a freeze or a lock to edit it, then Prolaborate will honor it. So that's given highest priority. These controls will apply only when it's editable in EA, and then this user has edit permission through access permissions. So there's two levels of screening already before they come to this. So when they have an edit permission and it's editable in EA, these access controls will apply. So that's, it's not going to overwrite any of the measures that you would have taken previously. So that's the form, and we'll just quickly see where it's manifested. Anywhere, wherever you see the application, it could be from a diagram. I click on an application, the form that I designed just now will be shown here. And you could see these are read-only. At the same time, the IT unit is the drop-down that comes with the tag value definition. So it's kind of reusing all the configurations that we do in Sparx EA, but then just lets us simplify it further. And if I, as an architect, as a modeler, I want to edit this, I don't have to go through the long routes. Just click on form editor. It will quickly open this for you. You could update this, and the form or the user view will be updated almost instantly. Okay, so we'll just, we have just seen three key use cases: sections, access permissions, and modeling languages. But with these three, we have effectively eliminated things that we don't want the users to see. And then amongst the contents that the users can see, what we have done is we have eliminated unnecessary details that are irrelevant to my users and just showing them what's absolutely essential. That doesn't mean they wouldn't be able to do any of the other things. So there's always option to go look at the traceability, usage, and attributes, operations, all the things that you would usually do in EA. If there is a user who wants to get to those kind of details, it's there. But on an outset, the simplest view that you want your users to have can be achieved with these three steps to start with. So with this, we'll just take a quick 10 minutes break, and we'll come back and resume. And just another reminder, so if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat window to key in your questions. We'll try to go through in the last half hour, or if not, we'll reach out to you with response and follow-ups after the session. So we were looking at the first three features that will help us eliminate or selectively share contents to get a better focus, and also simplify information that's been shared. And I was just showing how we could take the set of tag values or MDGs that we would have already done as part of our architecture implementation and use it in Prolaborate out of just by importing an MDG, or you could define your own form by dragging and dropping the tag values. Just along those lines, this form that you're defining and the role that the user is logged in together is what defines his view or her view. So if I am having another form that is catered for a development team, and they are not supposed to update the IT unit or lifecycle, the form that they see will be different. But it's not just this form. Wherever we, in whichever way we come to this, the property screen. So this is the same screen and the same set of details that we shown in pretty much all the access methods. So if you are looking at an application from the project browser, which is quite a rare thing in Prolaborate, but if you click on it, you get the details page of that application, and what you'll see is even this form here, or the details that is shown here, is based on the form that we have defined for that stereotype. So there is just one place where you configure the end user's view, and that is kind of taken across the board. So this landing page for an application or an activity or any stereotype will take the configuration that we have done for that particular stereotype and use that to build this view. And along with it, we are also showing the most, the next most useful things, such as usage and traceability. Again, there could be many other things associated with this, but based on our users' feedback, they wanted to see the usage. When I say usage, I'm exactly referring to what you would see in EA, all the diagrams where this particular application is being used. So application domain, cards applications, mass market, these are all. So if I look at this, I click on it, the diagram, the particular diagram can be viewed almost instantly. And if I go back here, the traceability is the same as well. So it kind of shows me that there's an association to a capability. So this is marketing management, a capability. By looking at the icon, I can understand. But let's say if I want to know more, I just click on it, I get taken to that capabilities page. And as you could see, the capabilities page is different to an applications page. So that's where, that's what users have been expecting for a long time. An application shouldn't have constraints and scenarios. It's a use case thing. So, it's not a one size fits all. We want to have different experience depending on what artifact we are looking, and Prolaborate helps us achieve exactly the same. So the form that we defined here is not only to view a diagram and look at its properties, but across the board in Prolaborate, you see these things. If I am defining a report, for example, we'll come to this soon, but if I look at a report, and the columns in this report are auto-built based on the form. So the form that we define or the colors that we standardize, it's all done once at the highest level of configuration, and that is kind of cascaded across the board. That's another key focus area that we have done. We wanted the configuration to be minimal, it's a trade-off. We can give a lot more configuration and flexibility, but at the cost of user experience, and the time to get the modelers trained in it was also overwhelming. So we are always trying to strike that fine balance where we want to give the flexibility, at the same time keep it to the vast majority use cases, rather than trying to get fancy about it and go too all out on it. So just coming back to what I was trying to show, the forms that we design is applicable across the board. So it's a one-time configuration for a role. This is what people will see wherever they go. And what's coming in 4.3? So it's yet to be released in a couple of weeks. But what you will see is, like how we have tagged values, you can also have connector-based properties. When I say connector-based properties, another common concern that people have is these traceability information is not for everyone. Someone who is an architect may be able to interpret it, but this is not for everyone. We are introducing a way where I could define pretty much like how we look at the business units and IT units. You will have another form field which will say capabilities, and you will have that ability to configure it such that the connected capabilities are displayed here. It will not talk about Archimate association to, from, whatever. It will just say, for this application, these are the capabilities. So 2 capabilities will be listed here. 3 data objects will be listed here. 2 information objects will be listed here. So it kind of taking it one more notch by even eliminating these additional information, which makes little sense to the business user. So that's coming up in 4.3. I have a working version of it now, but I didn't want to show it now because in the instance or the version that you probably have installed, you wouldn't see that. So, but it's coming. So probably in the next training, I'll be showing that as well. So the form that we define is almost used in the in multiple places. So that's sort of the second key use case that we spoke about, which is simplifying and exposing the right level of details for the artifact that they are looking at. And the next step is curating. And curation is an important part as well. Once you have a well-defined EA model, once you have people in who is interested to look at it, now the next question is, how do I make it even more intuitive and even more usable for these users so that they could understand the insights from it? As we know, these tagged values and the interconnections are incredibly useful. These interconnections is one of the main reasons why we go for a central repository and put in all the efforts to do the modeling. Like these interrelationships, I should be able to go all the way from my motivations and values and navigate down to its applications and data and infrastructure. The whole idea of an architecture model is to have that ability to do a what if analysis and impact analysis. But can a non-EA user make any sense out of this? And this probably not, because these are, firstly, they wouldn't even get to this point and look at it. Secondly, these interrelationships are too complex for a non-EA user to get their head around and get some insights out of it. So the curation use case will become inevitable once the other few steps that I already mentioned are done. And in this use case, we will be able to convert these tags and relationships to come up with visualizations that helps us drive key queries or answer key queries that usually comes from the business. Now, in terms of curation, there are multiple steps to it. So this is the advanced or the more sophisticated way to get into these tags and interrelationships and define charts. But even before that, you have already done a fair few things, which makes it easier for users to access model information. What I mean by that is, so all the first three steps is all the backend stuff. So we haven't even looked at what a user experience will be when the user logs in. So this screen should technically not be shown to the user. Once they log in, they'll be automatically be taken to a landing page. I'm emphasizing the fact that it is a landing page, and the landing page could be a list of diagrams or it could be a dashboard. This is again a setting that you can say when a user logs in, I want them to land or see the dashboard to begin with, or I want them to see the diagrams to begin with. This is a setting that you can determine. But then when you say I want them to land or see the dashboards, you have the option to define multiple dashboards and say which group gets to see which dashboard. Like, it's again customizable as per the persona or the user we are targeting. So if I am part of an application team, I land in the application portfolio dashboard. But if I am from a strategy team, for example, I could be probably taken to an enterprise strategy dashboard. So depending on which user logs in, they could be taken to different dashboards. But in terms of simplicity in setting up, the first thing we could do is to start with diagrams. That's why I had diagrams configured as my default landing page. So when a user logs in this example, I am expecting them to land in the diagrams page. When I say diagrams page, there is a very strong use case behind this, which made us come up with a view like this. Again, we were trying to invite a couple of users to look at our EA model diagrams, but we didn't have a way to give them something that they could just click and look at a diagram. Something that will show them just the diagrams that are relevant to them, not the hundreds and thousands of diagrams that I have in my repository. If I start showing all my diagrams in some way or the other, it's going to be a nightmare. But what we rather wanted is a simple way so that to the users, so that they could just look at the most relevant diagrams for them and look at it. So that was the use case or the requirement that led us define a view like this. So this is called my diagrams for a reason. So if I am logging in and I have access to certain packages, the diagrams that are shown to me will only be from those packages. So it will not show a diagram that I don't have access to. So that in itself eliminates out of, like, there could be hundreds of diagrams in my EA repository, but what I am shown is only 71 diagrams because these are in the packages for which I have been given access. So the first step that we saw, access permissions, takes care of this as well. And everything in the user's viewport is tailored to these 71 diagrams only, not to the hundreds of diagrams in the EA repository. What I mean by that, if I want to filter, the filter shown here will only list the type of diagrams that is in the 74. So I have some process diagrams, I have some component diagrams, I have some activity diagrams. And if I want to look at just the process diagrams, it's as simple as clicking on it, and that quickly brings the 4 or 6 diagrams in the entire model that I have access to, and that I have to take a closer look at to give feedback. So this brings me the 6 BPMN diagrams. And if I click on one of these, that will take me to the live EA diagram. I'm emphasizing the fact that it's a live EA diagram because it's connecting to the same repository, and all the changes that we make in an EA model will be reflected here instantly. So there was already a question, and this comes very often. Can we edit diagrams using Prolaborate? The answer is no. And it's been a careful design decision from Sparx Systems to not allow editing through a web browser, because the model is being set up in a way that it's governed and it's editable only by the architects. This is for the non-EA users to view, review, update model, but update model in a limited manner. So they could update the documentation, metadata, even connectors. So, in the upcoming release 4.3, you can add and remove connectors just through your forms here, not by drawing connectors. But if I have 5 applications connected to this, I can remove these 2, which will in turn delete the connectors in the model as well. So that's coming up, not yet here. But what we can't do is we will not be able to edit diagrams here. However, as a user experience factor, I don't know if you're all aware, but there is a SaaS version of the Sparx platform as well, where your enterprise architect and Prolaborate is all hosted and managed and rendered through a browser. So you don't need an installed application at all. Everything will be through a browser. So that's already available, and a number of users are using it. And in such a deployment, you will be able to go from here and edit a diagram in an editor almost instantly. So you will have the editor or EA opening in another tab with this diagram so that you could quickly edit it. So editing is a use case that is only supported by Sparx EA today. It is not supported by Prolaborate, but that's a careful design decision from Sparx Systems. However, these use cases, the use cases around Prolaborate is viewing it, updating the metadata if required, and collaborating or sharing your feedback or review comments on it. You can analyze its traceability, you can analyze its usage and everything else except diagram edits. Okay, now going back to the curation and the first step. So first step is diagrams view. Bear in mind, I am hardly going to my project browser. So I personally think the business users or the non-EA users should not spend any time digging through these browsers. That's for an architect to organize contents in their model. It is there in Prolaborate because we have to show it. However, the end user's view is more defined by the architects, by the people who want to publish these models, and the diagrams view is the easiest thing that you can achieve. There's no configurations required. Once you define your access permissions and say this package can be seen by this group, the moment a user from this group logs in, he or she will see the diagrams from those packages. So that's as simple as that. And once you see a diagram and you click on it, you see all the objects, and these objects automatically takes the forms that you have defined for that particular type and shows it. So pretty much the first 3 steps defines how the user's experience is across the portal. So the diagrams view is the first thing, but then if these diagrams view is too simple and it's not conveying all the information to your users, then you could start designing what we call dashboards. A dashboard is something that's a combination of multiple things. So it could be a EA diagram, it could be a chart, it could be a list, it could be images, it could be HTML content, it could be YouTube videos, it could be literally anything that you want to put together so that the end user who sees it gets all the information that they want. For example, here I have used a combination of information like text and some graphs and other visualizations, so that when an application owner or an application portfolio team logs in, they see or get the exact information that they want. So a dashboard can be custom designed based on a user's or a use case or multiple use cases, and you could have multiple widgets that is used to define these dashboards. I'll show these in a moment. But then in terms of the user experience, I can then say, if I go to a list of all the dashboards, I can then say which user groups will have access to these dashboards. So not all dashboards are shown to all the user groups. You can say which user or which user group gets to see these dashboards. And there is a lot of control here. Again, it's all based on what our users wanted. If you are designing a dashboard for a particular user, let's say is a key stakeholder, who needs to approve for a budget, or approve the project, you can put together a dashboard and go to that user's configuration and say, for this user, I want to show this dashboard. So when he or she logs in, they will see the dashboard that we have put together for them. So it goes to a lot of granularity on who gets to see these dashboards. But dashboards is a very effective way to create custom user experiences as opposed to generic diagrams view. So these are the two landing pages that your users could have, and depending on what is easy for you, you choose one over the other. But in terms of dashboard definition, you could have a combination of charts, diagrams, reports that leverages EA model information. So that's where we are moving towards. And all these dashboards, it's custom built. But when I say custom built, most of the EA users will have this stigma associated with it. They will assume it's going to be a couple of scripts or queries to achieve this. We come from the same modeling world. We work as consultants, so we know the pain of writing a query. We know the pain of writing scripts. For some, it's like a piece of cake, but for me, it's not. That's the last thing I would like to do. So these charts and reports and dashboards, it's all designed in a way that you could just drag and drop and configure and get these views in no time. So we'll see that in a moment, but each of these are custom defined based on use cases, and you could have a predefined set of templates, reusable widgets, reusable charts that you could apply on multiple projects as well. So there are two-dimensional charts like you see here, it could be a pie chart or a graph or a bar, or you could have multi-layer charts. So these are multi-layer charts. For example, I have in my model business values. Business values are connected to capabilities. Capabilities are connected to applications. And in my meta model, I have a very clear definition. A value is connected to an L2 capability, and L2 capability is connected to an application. we are using a particular type of connector. So I know this hierarchy, but that's good. I mean, I know as an architect, I know how do I consolidate all this complexity and give my user something that they could very easily understand. That's where these multi-level charts comes into picture. This is a multi-level dynamic chart automatically built. Again, I am not drawing it. All I need to do is configure it in such a way that I tell it where to start, what's the connector to the next level and to the next level. So I just have to define a connector that connects a value and capability. And this is where consistency in modeling and governance that I was talking about becomes absolutely essential. If I am using 4 different types of connectors between 2 objects, none of these charts would convey anything meaningful. It will be like, garbage in and you get the same. So we need consistency in modeling. And once you have consistency in modeling, all these views will start making a lot more sense. So there are multiple dashboards and options that we can use to build the user experience. And I'm going to just show you a few of them, just to give a picture of how an EA model information could be translated into all these charts. And these are just the set of limited charts that we are supporting. And we are always open for suggestions. And if there are things that you feel is absolutely essential for an architectural use case, we'll be more than happy to take your information or take your inputs and add support accordingly. So all these charts are just driven by EA models and nothing more. So we'll just go back and see how this is done. So I'll just going back to Sparx EA model and gonna show you what I have in my model. So I got application inventory. As I said already, I have a set of applications called COTS applications, and I've got another set of applications which I call business applications, but these are essentially applications that I imported from ServiceNow. So this has a different set of metadata. It's along the same lines. It has criticality, it has classification, it has a status, it has an application type. But the difference is these are mastered in ServiceNow, and I'm only storing it in EA. But the COTS applications has a different set of metadata, which I'm modeling in Sparx EA. This could be something that I maintain it in EA, or it could be an Excel extract that I get from another tool and I import it here. There are multiple ways I can get it. But in my application inventory, I got 2 sets of applications. And these 2 applications at my architectural meta model are pretty much the same. What I mean by pretty much the same is I'll just show you with a quick example that if I take an application, it could be a business application, which is ServiceNow application, or a COTS application, which is something that I model. Both will have similar meta model. Like, it has connections to capabilities, it has connections to processes, it has connections to infrastructure, technology components, data components. So these 2 has pretty similar meta models. And I'm just going to use one of this to demonstrate what my EA model has. So I'm just going to use the insert related elements very quickly to build a view around it. As you all know, this is one of the most powerful and desirable outcome that we want. Take an artifact and look at its impact. And you are getting everything from a capability. So this is a business capability that is coming from the business capabilities landscape. So I got an L1, L2, L3 capabilities modeled. And similarly, this is from an activity. So I've got a process diagram that has this activity as part of it. And similarly, I have data information diagram, I have infrastructure diagram. So there are multiple diagrams which has helped us build this view. But in one go, I'm able to get this in using insert related elements. And as you know, this is the key. And if I take a capability and look at it, so this is coming from an L2 capability. As I said, I know in my meta model, my L2 capability is what
is connected to applications. So I take this, and with very high confidence, I know there is an L1 capability connected to it, and that L1 capability is connected to, like, the values, or it could be connected to the goals as well. So I know this is a standard meta model, and this is again connected to L0 capability. So this structure, whichever capability I take, I will be able to get this kind of a view across. And that's where the consistency, the model consistency comes into picture. So I could do pretty much the same for this as well. So I drag and drop this here. I'll have an L2, and then I'll have things that are associated to it. So it's pretty much standard meta model. As you see, this is where I was emphasizing on meta models and standardization before. And if I take this program and say, tell me all the other applications that are connected to it, it will have all the other applications that are connected to it as well. So it's a highly interconnected model. So there's COTS application and business application, which are pretty much used interchangeably, except the way it's imported into my model, it's used interchangeably. All the connectors are standardized. So such is the complexity of my EA model. Now, how do I make use of all this is where Prolaborate comes into picture. I hope the pain points are kind of evident. I have invested hours and days and months and years to build a view like this, and there's like incredible information here that could help anyone do a what if analysis or get some insights from it. Now, how do I make use of it is what we're going to see now. Okay, so first thing, I'll just start with application inventory and how to list an application inventory item here. So I've got two sets of applications. Only an architect knows there are two sets of applications, and each application could have different metadata. Only an architect will know. An end user need not even know that there are two sets of applications. And that's what I've achieved here. So if you look at it, business applications, COTS applications, they are pretty much interleaved in the same dashboard. Depending on what I click, I get to see those applications and its properties. So the end user wouldn't even realize these are coming from different sources. There are different tag values associated with it. The end user doesn't have to even know it. So I'm clicking on Sam, and it shows me the properties associated with it. It's as simple as that. And to build a view like this, we'll just see how we can build a view using a new dashboard. So I'll just create a new dashboard. I'll call it training dashboard. The dashboard is something that we build, like custom build, based on a user's expectation or what we want to show to a particular user group. And then you could have multiple widgets. Widgets are blocks, building blocks that you could use in these dashboards. And you could see, could be text, images, HTMLs, and EA related widgets. So you could have simple hyperlinks shown. So I'll just start with the simplest thing. So I'm just going to say I could have a hyperlink. And let me just say, so I'm just looking for a business application landscape diagram, and I want to give a hyperlink to it. So, links. So that's a small widget, and I can have multiple hyperlinks added to it. Or alternatively, I can have a EA diagram shown. So, if I want to display my COTS application as a diagram, I can resize it. So, depending on what the contents in it, I can resize it. So it's just a matter of, using the graphical user interface to design your own view. And this is the COTS applications diagram. And now I again go add a new widget. In this, I'm not going to come to charts yet. I'm going to use a report. Report is the list. Like if I want to present an application catalog to my users, when they land, I can use a report. A report is a list view. So you could have predefined configurations. So that is something that we were given as feedback for the last many years, like since launch. And in 4, we have focused on it extensively, and we've introduced this capability to have reusable configurations. So you define it once and reuse it across multiple definitions. But let's say I want to show my COTS applications. So I'm just looking for COTS applications package. Okay, just to do it in a step by step. I'm just identifying the package in my project browser and adding it. And once I add that, so this is a report configuration wizard. As I said, you can use advanced configurations. You could define a query to do the same, but query is for advanced DA users, and I'm not one, and I don't expect many people who use this to be one. So we don't want to go to the query. I can use the designer to achieve most of the common use cases. If you have a very complex scenario where I want to go 10 levels deep, jump 4 levels across, that's up to you. You define a query to it. But for a normal user and a normal use case, the designer should be more than sufficient. So I'm just choosing COTS applications from my browser. The moment I choose, it kind of shows me there are components and packages in my selection, and I just choose components. I could have further filter by stereotypes as well, but I know it's only one type of elements. I'm limiting it to components. And then if I want to filter it further, let's say I want to have a filter by status. So I want to show only applications whose life cycle is in production. So that's as simple as that to define a filter. So I'm just going to go next. This is, as I said, the predefined query. So it's a predefined query which you can edit. If you start editing it, if you're an advanced user, you want to edit it, you can go back to the designer, because the moment you edit it, you could be very fancy about it. We can't go back to the designer, but you have the ability to either copy the query and check, or just execute and see. So I'm just executing it and making sure I'm getting the right results. So I'm executing my query that was auto-generated against my model actual EA repository, and I'm validating, okay, there are 22 entries in this, and I'm fine with it. So done and save. That's pretty much the configuration. So all the steps that I did towards the end was also additional. All you need to do is select a package, select what you want to show, and this is my COTS applications catalog. So let's just see what we have defined so far. So I've defined a hyperlink, I defined a diagram, and then I defined a list. So I just save this, and then if I go to my training dashboard, you can see very quickly that we have built a dashboard with a hyperlink. So as you know, I can click on it, it will take me to the respective diagram. It's a hyperlink after all. And then if I go back to my training dashboard, this is a diagram. Again, the same, I click on it, that will take me to the full view of the diagram, and the diagram shows discussions and things like that. However, training dashboard again. So this is a diagram, and this is a list. See this, as you know, these are all the different ways that you would expect your users to interact with the model. You don't want them to browse through the project browsers to look at all this. And what you see here is, again, each of these widgets can be individually refreshed. If you think there is a model change that has happened and you want it to be refreshed, you can do it. You can share each of these widgets individually. So I can copy this link and share it to a user within my organization who have access to this. And that particular widget will open in a new window and show them the contents. Hopefully. As you can see, I'm defining a widget, and it's it's immediately becoming a shareable link. So I can type an email and send it to the user with just this link, and they get to see exactly the set of applications. If you've been following the first few steps that we did, this is also taking into account the form that I defined for this stereotype. So an application component Archimate is expected to have a business unit, IT unit, criticality, go live date, lifecycle, sunset. This is exactly what I defined in my form, and it's automatically taken into account. And you could see even the colors. So there's a lot of configuration that you don't have to worry about, already taken care of and automatically reflected in the views that you are doing. And I click on one of these objects, I'll be able to see this. And the key here is I'm looking at this as an anonymous user. So it's all read only. So there's nothing they could do other than just viewing it. Okay, so that's how easy it is to define a widget and share even the small widget to an external user. So I've got a hyperlink, I've got a diagram, I've got a report, and all built without a single line of query. I don't have to break my head to understand the stereotypes and tag values. It's all made easy for us to define it. Now let me just go edit this dashboard. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do three things. One, I'm going to do a single level chart using these COTS applications and one of this tag value, let's say business unit or IT unit, and we'll see how that reflects. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the complex relationships that I just demonstrated. So I've got things that are connected, multiple layers that are connected, or like capabilities that are connected. And I'll show you how a multi-level chart is built. And thirdly, you would notice I've got a few tag values which I've introduced on purpose. So the go live dates and sunset dates are dates which is expected to be used such. So there's a roadmap that I can build, or there are business significance and criticalities which I could use to build a bubble chart. So there are multiple charts. I will just try to do an example of roadmap in this demo. So I'm editing this dashboard. I'm going to add a new widget. We have used hyperlinks, we've used diagrams, we've used reports, and as you can see, none of these required any complex configurations, and the same applies to charts as well. So I'm just going to go to charts. It is looking for predefined configurations. As you could see, I have got multi-level charts. So I've got portfolio to project to application. So this is a 3-level configuration that I can have predefined. I can just use this to build my chart if required. The idea is, see, it's hard to do it in the Sparx ecosystem because there is no single standard meta model. But what our vision is, not today, but maybe in 6 months' time, in a year, we want to offer a predefined MDG that defines an architecture meta model with quick start guides, how to populate those fields, and with predefined charts and reports and dashboards, so that if a team is setting up an EA practice, if a team is setting up a solution architecture practice, they should just be able to feed in contents from Excels or manually import them into the respective packages, and everything should start working. That's our goal. Not there yet, but we would like to, all these are to facilitate something like that. There are a number of consultants across the world who are doing this already, and all these features are already being used by them to define predefined quick start toolkits for architecture teams to start. Anyway, that thing aside, now I'm gonna just start with a very simple chart. So I'm gonna use a pie chart, and in the pie chart again, I want to use the COTS application. So this COTS application, I'm just choosing COTS application, and again, as you know, this is nothing but selecting a package. So I've just chosen a package. I could have just dig through this and chosen it, but I just use the find to choose it. Once I do that, immediately Prolaborate will go and say I have components and packages in it, and I'm just choosing components. And the next thing is it's a pie chart, and I can build a pie chart based on any property or metadata associated with it. And what I'm going to do is build a chart based on basic properties are things like name and status and version and complexity, all the EA's standard metadata. Haven't seen very many people using that in this context. It's mostly tagged values, which is additional metadata. And I want to do it, let's say, based on life cycle. So what I want you to take a quick look at is the moment I say tag values, it kind of understands what's in this package, and it automatically shows you all applicable tag values. So you don't have to remember or dig into EA to understand this. It shows these are the applicable tag values. Choosing lifecycle, next. This is for advanced users. I'm not even going to bother about it, just skipping it. And then comes additional configurations, like that you could do, font colors and display settings, some basic configurations that you would expect in a chart, and save. And it has automatically fit it here. So apps by life cycle. I'll just buy some space and save. And that's it. If I go back to the chart, you could see it has defined a chart based on life cycle. But what is key here is compared to people who, if you have already used EA charts, we can do some charts in EA as well. But the challenge is it's not interactive. I mean, we want these charts to be interactive and clickable. So these are all interactive fields. So if I want to turn off sunset, I just click on it, the chart will get updated automatically. So I've turned off sunset. So I'm only seeing production and UAT applications. And if I want to dig into it, if I want to look at the UAT applications, I click on the UAT, and that takes me to the set of applications in COTS package that are in UAT status. You could see that kind of makes it so seamless for anyone to click and navigate through my model and find the right information effortlessly. If I have to do the same using EA, you really need to know what to look at and what to do to get to a point like this. And here, a single click will show me the properties, and based on who is logged in, the form, the editing, and everything else gets reflected as well. So I built an interactive chart that lets people, slice and dice it or edit, change it based on what their preference is, and also click and navigate through as well. And this was done pretty much with a very simple configuration. So that's a simple chart. Now I'll use the same set of applications to build, some advanced chart. Like, there are some specialized charts. Example, so I'll skip this report part. There is a bubble chart, which is very useful. Like, there is a quadrant approach for application portfolio, for project significance analysis. So you could use that, the bubble chart, to do an analysis of which applications to retain, to invest, to divest. So you could use bubble charts and a combination of tag values to drive some really meaningful charts as well. But a roadmap is another important aspect. So a roadmap, all it requires is an artifact and a couple of dates. And in this case, I'm again going to use the COTS application. So I'm choosing COTS application package and selecting it, saying OK. And in this case, again, what I'm going to do is for the roadmap, all I need to do is what's my start date. And by default, it doesn't even show basic properties because EA doesn't have a basic property to indicate a go live date or sunset date and things like that. But in my model, I've got a go live date and a sunset date, which is expected to be the end date of it. So there should be a sunset date. And the moment I choose these dates, so this is important. This is where it gets a little murky because the date formats in the model could be anything.
But Prolaborate kind of shows what is the date format in my actual EA repository. It may not be essentially what is in my current regional settings. So you just have to be mindful that it's a date format, and I just have to choose. This is an important step. We couldn't find a way to automatically figure this out yet. We're working on it, but so for now, it's a configuration that you need to do. You need to see what's in the system and then update the date format accordingly. And then what I could do is, if I want to color code the applications in my roadmap based on a tag value, again, I could choose color coded or group it. So if I want to group the applications in my roadmap based on, let's say, vendor, I'm just saying choose vendor. You also have an option to give dependencies. So, if an application goes to the sunset mode, then if there's a dependent application that will be impacted, you could model dependencies as well, but I'm not going to get to that now. I'm skipping to the next step, which is pretty much the query if someone wants to edit it, but then I'm skipping them. And I'm coming to the third step where I could define the roadmaps look and feel, like, the spaces and margins and heights and things like that. And I can also have a start and end timeline if I want to custom do a timeline, and then the date format to be displayed in it. And the key here is I can also set a milestone. So what is a milestone? Let's say a CIO review. And I can just say a date. I'm just making up something here, and a color. So this is like, if I want the milestone to be reflected in my roadmap, I can add those. So these are manually added. There is no other way that we could figure out yet to do that. And that's pretty much the definition. Hopefully it works. So there's the thoughts roadmap. I go back and look at the training dashboard. And what you'll see here is I've got the roadmap, and these are vendors. So HP, IBM, Microsoft, Amdocs, these are the vendors. I click on this, it expands all the applications under HP, under IBM, under Microsoft, under Amdocs. And you could see the color coding is again based on the status, like the life cycle. So you could see it's a production. This is UAT. This is production. So, the colors are applied automatically based on the tag value that I configured as well. So I can have settings which says automatically expand while opening. So these are small nuances that you could do. But a roadmap was defined just by using two tag values. And that's pretty much what is expected. That's the idea of having the metadata in it. And you could see that it is again interactive. You could click on it, look at its details. So it's pretty much everything that you do in Prolaborate. The idea is that gives an entry point to the users to navigate and kind of explore the model further. So that's the roadmap. And I know we are just heading towards the break. I'll just do one more report, which is going to be a multi-level chart, and I'll wrap with. We'll take a break just after that. So I'll finish the roadmap, and then I'm going to add a new chart. But this time is going to be a little more complicated because the model is such. It's not a piece of cake. It's not just a single level detail that we are talking about. We are talking about 3 levels, for example. And let's see how this could be converted into a multi-level chart. Okay, so just you need to have some basic understanding that this is an L0 capability, which is connected to L1 and L2. L0 to L1, there's a connector. L1 to L2, there's a connector. So that's some basic information that you need to be aware of. And then I'm going to go charts and skip the predefined reports. There are 3 multi-level charts, a heat map, a nested pie, or a landscape. And I'll just start with the landscape chart. And what I could do is I need to start with L0 capabilities. I could again browse and find, or I'm just going to use my search. Oops.
I'm just searching for L0. Hopefully I got the name correct. So I've got the L0 capabilities, which I want to set as my starting point. So that's all I need to do, starting point. And then Prolaborate will start digging into my model and say, in this package, it says, I'm able to see some capabilities in it. So I say, yes, that's what I want. So capability is where I'm starting. I could color code it, I could filter it. There are multiple options. I'm going to skip them for now. And I'm going to add group 2. What is group 2? Group 2 is the next level from here. And how do I traverse from here to here? Through a connector. Okay, so I know this consistent view everywhere. So that's where consistency comes into picture. All my capabilities are going to have the same consistent layout, or organization, like connectors and types of connectors are going to be consistent. So I know with reasonable level of confidence, I can go ahead and define a chart. So I'm going to add group 2. And how is group 1 connected to group 2? Using a connector. So I'm going to say I have an incoming connector. And that incoming connector, it immediately will go through my model and say it's able to see an aggregation connector, an incoming aggregation connector. So I'm choosing aggregation as the type of connector. The moment I choose aggregation connector, Prolaborate goes ahead and sees in the other end, I'm able to see another capability, which is just reading my model. As you could see, I started here. I'm saying I want an aggregation connector to traverse to the next level. It automatically goes and says, OK, I can now see another capability in the other end. So I'm just saying, I want the capability to be chosen. Then I'm going to go add group 3. Now from level 2 to level 3, again, I want a connector, but what you see is there is an association connector and an aggregation connector that I could choose from. So I'm going to say incoming connectors, and then it shows me there is an association or an aggregation that you could choose from. So you could see it's almost going through the model side by side and giving you the real-time data to configure. So aggregation, and then the moment I choose aggregation, it immediately says the next level of item is also a capability. Fine, I'm choosing the capability. So I've got my L0, L1, L2 configured. Now, just to add some flavor to this chart, let me just take a look at this capability, and you'll see that it has some tag values. So it has criticality, high, medium, low. So I want to use the criticality, high, medium, low to define the color coding in the third level. So I could just say, I want to color code these blocks based on tag values, and it automatically fetches me the tag values pertaining to those capability at the level, like at the third level. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go next, not bothering about these complex queries, not for me. And the next thing you'll see is these are the colors that you could use to display this information. Again, I'm going to leave it as is. I'm not going to modify it, but you could obviously change the colors and fills and fonts and sizes depending on whatever is best suitable for you. So you have a fair bit of options to configure the look and feel of it. And I'm going to say save. And instead of fitting it here, I'm just going to take some space and make it a little bigger. And this is my capabilities. And save. As you can see, the amount of configuration is minimal, and it's also intuitive. Like it doesn't offer you everything and asks you to choose from it. It gives you a controlled model-based approach to define it, so it's less intimidating for the architects even. And if I go to the training dashboard, what you'll see is the roadmap. I think I crammed it too much, but the capabilities, the L1, L2, L3, I could have actually given a proper name to it. I got capabilities, business necessity, corporate services, and the capabilities in it, just to show you where it's coming from. It's nothing but an EA model. So I got the same thing modeled in EA manually using diagrams and connectors. how the time it will take to create one of these and the time it will take to maintain one of these as well. And I'm achieving a result very similar to it, but in my opinion, this is much more friendlier because you could really interact with the data, minimize, maximize, and just see what you are interested to see. So I don't want to bother about necessity, essential, and strategy. I want to look at the value, or I just want to look at necessity and value. And then in it, I want to look at supply chain management. So you could literally filter out or play with the data and understand what you want to see. And furthermore, I can even turn on, turn off things. So if I don't want to show low priority items, I just turn it off. So it removes all the low priority items and just shows me the high and medium criticality capabilities. So it gives a number of options for the users to play with the data, and building it is also easy, and maintaining it is not a user task. It kind of takes care of itself. It automatically updates based on what you do in EA, and it's clickable, it's navigable, and you could click on it and look at its details as well. So definition is simple, and the effectiveness is also, I mean, it's quite effective to show a data like this instead of in a diagram, in a view like this, where people could really interact and get the insights that they want. So this is a dashboard that we did using a few constructs, but what is essentially the goal of this session was to show you everything that we do in Sparx gets reused in Prolaborate and gives you plenty of options to display it in a way that is easily understandable by the non-EA users. And it's just a very small set of charts that I'm showing here, but there's plenty of options. And based on these, we have built a number of sample dashboards. So if someone is interested to start with, we are always happy to share the sample model with these dashboards so that they could get an understanding. If you are intending to set up an EA practice, we are more than happy to share you the sample models, the dashboards, even the MDGs that I put together to achieve something like this is available. So I even shared the link to the application portfolio webinar. There is a similar webinar for business capabilities modeling as well. And in those webinars, with those two webinars I presented, but what I would have shown is starting from an Excel, how do I build a model, then build a dashboard, and then use it. So I'm not talking about any existing, I'm not assuming anything, existing models. I would go from Excel and convert it into a model and then convert them into something that's meaningful like this to share to the user. So if you are interested, always feel free to reach us, and we'll be happy to share those resources as well. Okay, I know I went over time a little bit, but I hope this was useful. So that's the main, one of the main, use case, in my opinion, when you get more serious about architecture, practice, and engaging more people. And there is a number of things in Prolaborate that helps us define these views and maintain them seamlessly. And I just demonstrated by using some minimal widgets and EA data to build it. So we'll just take a break and we'll resume in 10 minutes, please.
Okay, thanks for waiting. We'll resume. And I'll quickly start with a question that was like for a break. So in terms of navigating, this is a specific question. I'm just we have 1 more minute to resume. I thought I'll start with this. So in terms of navigating, there was a concern that was always raised from 3.x. So how we have this composite diagrams in EA where I could double click on it. Yeah, so that's been a problem. So double click on it and I navigate through these diagrams, and then some way to go back was a problem. So we have actually, the browser back will also work, but still it's not consistent. So we have introduced a back
and a history feature. So a combination of these two will make sure you're always on track. So if I click a back here and a back here, it gets me back, it just goes backwards. So I think this.
Excellent, thank you. And we're currently on 3.5 and we're going to be upgrading to 4.x here in the next couple of weeks. So that'll be a great improvement. The other thing, I don't know if you saw my other question. The other question was that if I send a link to somebody and they're not logged in, what is the page I'm going to land on? When I sent them a link to a very specific model, what page do they land on if they're not logged into Prolaborate?
So there are two types of share. One is a public share and one is a private share. So if you are having a public share, even if they are not logged in, they'll be able to see that one diagram. So public share will take them to that diagram immaterial of whether they are logged in or not. It's an anonymous view, but they will not have a project browser. They will not have any other navigation. It's only this. But if it is a private share, it will ask them to log in. And if they don't have permission to that particular diagram, it will say you do not have permission. So it will display a message that you do not have permission, but their project browser and home buttons will be shown to them.
We tend to find that when we do this, people have to land on the login page if they're not logged in. And then when they log in, they're given then the list of repositories that we have in Sparx. But if we tell them, okay, we'll go back and select the link again, and then you'll get the page of the link that we just sent you.
Okay, it seems to be an interesting use case, but we can try to see if that kind of user experience. I mean, at the moment it's not possible, but we can see if that could be supported.
If I send a URL to an Amazon product that's I find on Amazon, right? It's a specific URL to that page. I might not be logged in, but I'll go to that page. That's what we prefer it to do, is to get me to that model, even if I have to hit login first. But then once I log in, it continues on and goes to that specific link that I sent.
Yeah, makes sense. It does make a ton of sense. But at the moment, that kind of user flow hasn't been factored in. That's definitely a feedback that we can take. We'll try to.
Okay, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing here. This has been awesome, so thank you. Sorry, I'm nitpicking.
No. It's this kind of feedback is what is helping us improve. So yeah, thanks for sharing it. Okay, so we'll resume. In terms of what I was showing, we were looking at dashboards and we were defining model-based dashboards, and that is an a very useful feature if you want to target specific audience and give them the right level of details and the right information, a dashboard is a really useful utility. And one additional feature that is in 4, there used to be an impact analysis view in 3, which the idea was great. We tried to do the best, but there were some repeated performance issues when the model was getting larger and larger. So in 4, we have replaced it completely with a much more, graphical-based analyzer view, which is faster, highly responsive. And what this helps us do is, again, this is for an advanced Prolaborate user, not for everyone, but for an advanced Prolaborate user, if I am looking at an EA diagram, for example, this is an applications view. I just built this view in Sparx EA. As I was demonstrating how complex information could be modeled, and how I could use insert related elements to build a view like this. And if I want to go back to Prolaborate, maybe I'll just refresh this. You could see it's instantly updated. So I updated my EA model, and you could see it's instantly updated. There's no lag or manual work to update it. But if I want to do the due diligence using Prolaborate, there is something called an analyzer view, and the analyzer view just converts an existing EA diagram into something which has nodes and edges. So it's it's the same model and connectors. I hope I just get it right. I always end up in this embarrassing situation at times. Okay, something doesn't seem to work. Let me just try it once again. Okay, an analyzer view is just converting the EA diagram into a view that has the same information. So it has the application, it has the projects, it has data, it has node, it's Archivate application, Archivate capability, Archivate activities. It's pretty much the same, but it just renders in a node and edge kind of a format so that people who want to do the due diligence does not have to really bother about whether it's Archivate or UML or Toga. All they need to know is if I modify my CRM application, what's going to be impacted. And to give context, it also tells them what each of these are. So it's an application collaboration, for example, or if they want to switch to an EA-ish notation, you could switch to an EA-ish notation as well. But the use case is I take an application or take a diagram, convert into an analyzer view. And if I want to, let's say, take the invoicing system and understand the impact of it, I could just say, show me what's impacted if I change this. Or if I want to add more information, I just click on this. If I look at these views over here, so if I click on an application or an artifact, it quickly shows me everything that's connected to it. As you could see, this is nothing new. It's all the EA model information that's shown here. So this application is connected to a capability. It's connected to a couple of business processes. So I'm just adding information from my model here, but it just builds this complex view. And now if I want to do an analysis once again and say, show me things that are connected to it, it kind of shows me that it's connected to the account. So it's a data object. The color looks a bit strange, but let me just, so these are all things that you could quickly configure. So if I just set the color of the data to be blue, so these are data objects that are connected to it. I'll just stop this. Remove highlights. So I'm just stopping this highlights, but what I am essentially doing is using my model information. As I said, this is for an advanced Prolaborate user, but I could really do a what if analysis or an impact analysis using my EA data, and a click on an object will automatically show me things that are connected to it or show me things from the diagrams where it's used. So these are all the diagrams where the TMS is used, and I can insert objects from those as well. It highlights what is already in the diagram. Or it would also show me the project browser. If I want to really introduce something totally from a different location, I could do that as well. But it's a context-specific view that gets updated depending on the selection, and it will help you to build and do an impact analysis very quickly. You could save these views as a PNG or save it inside as a predefined analyzer view, which people could access by clicking on this and choosing one of the predefined views. I could convert an EA diagram into an analyzer, or I could start from an object and then go to the analyzer, open the analyzer, start with an object, and then build a viewer. So there are multiple ways to use it, but the use case here is you'll be able to do a what if analysis or impact analysis. It's pretty much like insert related elements of Sparx, but giving the same ability to even a non-EA user to play with the EA model information and do some due diligence. So this is something that is new in 4 as well. Now, I know we are in the last hour. I mean, we need to have some time for the questions, but we have looked at the focus part. We have looked at the simplification part. We have looked at the curation part. And the most important aspect is the engaging part. So all these are building blocks to make sure we engage the right audience. So now that we have things that are shown to them in the way that we want them to show, and it's also curated to provide them the insights, now what are the options to engage them or for them to engage with the model? So why is it important? I think these are things that we all know. it's working in silos and not having a collaboration tool is a recipe for failure. We have every tool in the world, like Confluence or SharePoint, is all about collaboration, and Prolaborate is built in the same tenet as well. So it's the advantage of Prolaborate is it's EA model based collaboration. So the diagrams, the packages, the elements that we use in EA are the key things that are being discussed. The feedback is persistent on those diagrams and elements so that in the future, someone comes to it, they know exactly what was the context of the discussion. Instead of losing them in an email, you can have these discussions happening in the model itself. So that's all about the collaboration. And within Prolaborate, you have ability to get notified if someone has added a new comment or tagged you or replied to your comment. So this has a proper in-app notification, and it will also have emails sent to users. So there will be an email sent to all the subscribed users with the link that they could use to click and straight away look at the artifact or the comment that was recently added. And it has in-app notifications like this, which can be used to identify all the recent activities as well. So it's a proper collaboration platform built on top of an EA model. So there are questions that usually comes to compare this with there is a chat facility or something within EA. These are entirely different use cases. So that is for an architect to have some comments within EA model to be shared within modelers. This is a collaboration platform that is akin to any of the modern day collaboration tools built on top of this Sparx platform, like the diagrams and packages and elements that we do. And Prolaborate force particular advancements or improvements is in 3. Our main focus was EA diagrams and EA elements and EA packages only. So everything was around EA packages, EA diagrams, EA elements, and EA connectors. But in 4, there was a number of user feedback that came to us saying, hey, we have actually changed the user experience. So the users wouldn't go to Sparx EA and look at these applications anymore. So we are not intending to even show the diagram. So there's been a number of users who went to this comfort zone where, rather than showing a complex, like a diagram to convey information, they started using, things like this, or the a combination of diagrams and hyperlinks and dashboards in Prolaborate as the default view for non-EA users. And there was a request to have collaboration happening in these as well. Like, for example, I can now discuss on this dashboard. I can now discuss on this particular report. I can now discuss on this roadmap. So each of these widgets can have a discussion associated with it. This is something that's new in 4. But coming from the basics, let's start with an EA diagram. So if I take an EA diagram, I have an option to click on a particular element and discuss. So I am clicking on a particular object and discussing, and the discussion is tagged against that object. So in all the diagrams where this object is shown, you will see there is this discussion. So it's quite, easily visible to the users, and they could just click on it and look at these discussions. If you want to discuss at a diagram level, I could click on this discuss and start discussing. When I discuss, it's not going to be just a textual comment. So I have a comment, and I can start tagging users, or I can start tagging, capability landscape. So I can start tagging other resources or other diagrams, other packages. I can then set a priority for it and then post. So what this means is you could see the color of the discussion itself reflects the priority. So it's a high priority comment, and this is made with, Beth is tagged explicitly. So she will get an email notification that there is a comment on this diagram by this user, and that comment will have reference to the diagram in which it was made as well. So just by clicking on the diagram or the comment itself, they can go to the exact diagram which was, referred in that comment. So it makes it really easy for a user who receives a notification to view the diagram on which this comment was added and anything that was tagged on it as well. And if someone else would like to support it, they could also use the like. This is just a social thing that they expect upvotings and likes and things like that. But this is also quite prevalently used by our users. So a comment in Prolaborate is not a textual chat message. It's an actual feedback with references to users, with references to other artifacts, and it is persistent against the EA diagram or the EA object that it was made against. And what you could see again in 4, it's all about user experience. As I said, it's not in our interest to introduce a whole array of new features just for the sake of introducing. Rather, we spend a lot of time refining the user experience and cleaning it up, and rather cutting down features to make it easier and simple rather than going the other way around. So what we have done is, the moment someone is looking at the properties, like this is the first thing, like click on something, they get to see the properties. They should be able to do pretty much everything from here. So if they want to discuss, click on discuss, go to discuss. If they want to go back to properties, just go back to properties. They want to open it on a new window, just do it. If you want to discuss it there, again, do it. So the user experience has been given, a lot of importance, and we have tried our best to come up with views. Again, if you have feedback, we'll be grateful to listen to the feedback and update it. But all the feedback that our users shared in the previous versions is what we have incorporated in 4. So in terms of collaboration, it's diagram-based collaboration to start with. And then if I want to share it to other users, I can just click share, and there are a number of options. So there's a public URL, a private URL, like we just discussed in the beginning of this third session. A public URL or a private URL, you copy this URL, email it to someone, and then they'll be able to click on it and straight away get to this diagram page. Or I could even invite users. So if I just, type a user's email and invite, they will be sent an email with this link and a custom message. So this is all made with an intention to make sure you invite the right people to action on it, to give us the feedback. Now, this is all the basic collaboration features in Prolaborate. But we have, review was introduced based on customer feedback as well. But review is a structured way to get feedback from users. What is a review? It's something that I could say, let's say I want to do a process review. I can have a definitive gated start date and end date, and then I could choose the so I'll just choose a diagram, and I want to do a couple of process diagrams. So I want to do launch, product, payments, plan, development, like 3 diagrams. I've just chosen 3 diagrams that I want to include for review. And the search is another new feature in 4. Like, in previous version, we didn't have this kind of a search. We wanted to make, people had to browse and find it. Another feedback that was incorporated is the search everywhere. So you'll be able to search in project, in browsers, in repository browsers, everywhere you'll have a proper search. And I can now choose users or user groups. So Beth and for example, or I could just go to the groups and say I want everyone from APM group to be invited to this review. So you could, this is another new thing in EA, in 4, Prolaborate 4, groups invite. And the third thing you could do is if you are inviting a user who is not in Prolaborate, I could just type an email of someone else as well. As long as you are able to provision access to that user, you can even type an email of a non-Prolaborate user and invite them to be a reviewer. So they will be only given permission to review the diagrams that they have been invited, and they will not see anything else. So review, it has just created a new review. So there's like, open review, and this is a moderator's view. In a moderator's view, this is a review dashboard. And here I'll be able to see all the diagrams that I have set for review, all the statistics. So as a moderator, I'm able to track what my users are doing. So if they have completed, I know they have completed. If they have just logged a feedback or a comment, I know it's done. I mean, it's open, then I can click on it to look at it. And if I go to Beth's view, so in absence of a review like this, what we used to do is we used to publish a PDF or a Word and then send it out as an email to users to review, and then their feedback is usually consolidated in Excels or emails, and then we go update the model and then republish, and the process just goes on. But here what we are talking about is once a review is set up, the reviewer would have been notified by email that there is a review being set up, and it's also shown in their application with a bubble, like it was having a bubble which says there is a review, and clicking on that, it will straight away take them to the reviewer's dashboard. The reviewer's dashboard, as opposed to the moderator's dashboard, will exactly tell them, hey, these are the 3 diagrams that you need to review. There's 8 days left, and they just have this option, mark as reviewed or add a comment. So again, people who have been using reviews in 3, you would see that there's a lot of UX improvements that has gone into it. I don't have anything to say that this is a great new feature in 4, like in reviews. It's all that we were able to do in 3, but we have done it in a much more intuitive and a user-friendly manner. So it's all easily accessible and usable by the users. Of course, there's improvements in notifications, in dashboards, in the way it's rendered and things like that. But the focus here is a reviewer should not think twice on how to interact with this interface and do a review. We are talking about users who are not modelers or non-EA users. We want them to look at the diagram and give us approvals. So this user experience is they get notified via email, they click on it, they get to this page, they know these are the 3 things that they have to review, and then they give us a go ahead or they post a comment. That's as simple as that. And once a comment is posted here, the moderator will know on the diagram that the comment was posted, and they could go fix it in EA and again reply to that comment, and this user will be notified that there's been a reply to the comment. They could again go back, look at the new diagram. They don't even have to navigate. They could just do a quick view, look if everything is okay, and give an approval. So that's how simplified the user experiences in 4. But reviews have been one really successful feature of Prolaborate, because there was a big gap in this space. Like, people with the documentation and review approach knows that it's a lot of time and efforts wasted in this redundant old archaic way of doing reviews. This is a real-time view where reviewers and the modelers interact with each other and get things done. So that's the collaboration and review feature, that we can use in Prolaborate to have the EA model contents shared and reviewed. And again, for the reviewers as well, there are some additional features in 4. Like you could just say, you could invite other reviewers. Let's say I have been invited to review and I would like to invite or delegate it to someone. I can just type in their email and invite them and add them as a reviewer. So they get automatically added as a reviewer. The moderator will know that there's a new reviewer being added. So the workflow kind of takes care of all these user actions as well. So that's to do with reviews. But this review and collaboration feature is a result. In our opinion, this is a result or the final goal of Prolaborate. But to be able to get to this point, we need to really do all the other use cases quite strongly. Like, you need to have so here, the user is able to quickly go into this diagram, look at this object and understand its properties without any hassle, because we have done the configuration already. So if it wasn't done, it is not as easy as this for a user to navigate and find the relevant information. It could be an element, it could be a diagram, it could be package, could be a report, like a widget, whatever it is. The reviews helps us get the right feedback from the right people. Okay, so that's the last use case that we want to look at, the collaboration part. And just a quick gist of what is in 4.3. So in the last training, I spoke about 4.2.1, but now we are talking about 4.3. Like I already mentioned, the connector based properties is something that we are really excited about. Like, that will solve a lot of use cases, pain points in terms of showing the traceability information. And then we also have some administrative side features, like, one of the main things is Confluence integration has been improved. It's been given a revamp, where we support Confluence Cloud, migration between Confluence Server and Confluence Cloud, because there's been some changes in the Atlassian side as well. They're going to stop supporting some of these configurations, which I'm not 100% aware of, but there was a number of requests from our users to do this migrations thing. So that's all being supported. And we're also having more granular whitelisting and blacklisting at an application level, because again, for security reasons, this was all requested. So there's a lot of administrative improvements as well. But then there's open community access, where you could just, if you have an on-premise setup, and if you're not really bothered about having a login to view, if you just want the Prolaborate pages to be like a read only for all your team, like entire organization, an open community access is a feature that gives you read-only access for everyone in the organization, and it's not going to be costed as an individual license. It's particularly called open community access, but it's more on an on-premise environment. In a cloud environment, this is against the security consideration, so we do not support this. These are things that we expect in 4.3. So that's pretty much what I wanted to show. It's very short span of time, like 2.5 hours, but the idea was to give you a first-hand view of why we even came with a product called Prolaborate in the first place, and what are the pain points we are trying to solve, and how most of the people in this forum are existing Prolaborate users. So you have these tools installed in your environment. We just want to give you that a little bit of push to make sure you use it in the right way. Okay, so questions. I've been seeing that there's been a number of questions coming up, and our team has been trying to answer them accordingly. But we have another 15 minutes. If there are any particular questions anyone would like to go, like, we will go through each of these questions and respond and emails as well. But if you have any questions now, please.
Hey, Nizam, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Is it Nizam?
Yep.
Anyway, Nizam, I appreciate very much the presentation today, especially the mention that we can go backwards, backspace, and Prolaborate that Rick had brought up. I can't tell you the headaches I've had with that, where I can't go back. So that's
Not
wonderful.
backspace, but using the browser back button.
Yeah, the browser back button, exactly. The one thing I wanted to just make as a comment, inside, like I do a lot of work with the various roadmaps, and these roadmaps are then seen to the world by Prolaborate, of course. And oftentimes we have like a drawing or something that has been deleted, and they're putting in a new drawing. Each time I have to go into Prolaborate and set up the proper links and get everything working again. And just to comment, there's a lot of interaction that we have to do between the Sparx and Prolaborate, and I wish they could do more things in the native Sparx, where if you go in and say change the location of a drawing, that you could easily get that taken care of in the Prolaborate as well, without having to go in, go into another application and do it for your various users.
Oh, that's a very valid feedback. I'm just trying to understand scenarios where there is a manual update required. Philip, it will be really appreciated if you could drop us a note with this. We will definitely take this quite seriously, because our idea is to prevent this multiple, additional steps to publish it in Prolaborate. If there are things that we have missed out, like it's probably something like a gap that we have missed, if you could share some notes, we will definitely try to work on it and share us our feedback.
Sure, absolutely.
Thanks. See there, while I'm waiting for anyone else to ask questions, though, there is a number of note I can see related to the other webinars, samples, the model that I used. All of these are for sharing. So, if you want the models, the Prolaborate demo dashboards that I built, please drop a note to us and we'll be happy to share it to you. If you are our cloud customers, we can even set it up in your environment and make it available for you. So please drop us a note. But then the other webinars that I've been referring to, they are mostly in the Sparx library, but there's one for application portfolio management, and then there should be one for business capabilities as well. And in each of these webinars, what we would have tried to show is the end-to-end flow, like not just building some dashboards or things like that, rather starting from the basic, from meta model definition and going all the way to achieve these use cases. So business is just trying to see if I can quickly find it. Yeah, so business capability map. This is another webinar. Again, we always try to do this, go from scratch, go end to end and try to make sure the use cases achieved. So here again, I've started with an Excel spreadsheet with capabilities, import them into EA, and then using that, connect them to the rest of the model, and then go build all these views. So if it is of any interest to you, please look at these references as well. We can share these to your email if you drop us a note as well.
Are those public on YouTube?
Yes, it is in YouTube.
What's your channel name? Just publish your channel name on the meeting chat.
Yeah, it's the Sparx Systems
channel. Okay,
so
thank you.
There are two channels, and I'll share both. So there's a Prolaborate channel and there's a Sparx Systems channel.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know they existed. Thank you.
These two. Yeah, so there's a lot of webinars and resources that you could avail. And there was the EA Global Summit that happened recently. Many of you might be aware of it. There's been a number of interesting presentations made by key speakers, like key practitioners across different countries, and they are all available in this channel. So this is the Sparx Systems Prolaborate channel. And you could see there's a number of interesting, these are quite useful resources for people contemplating using EA or Prolaborate. So there's something for your information as well.
Thank you.
Hi, Nizam. Soren from FISRA from Canada. It might be a little bit deep in the weeds, but there's a usability aspect of the list view. So whenever you click a whether you're from a landscape chart or wherever you get to a list view of, say, a package or anything, you have a drop down that allows you to select which fields to display in that list view, right? And there's no ability to cache that. So if I have 10, if my form allows me to see 10 fields, but it's too small and I just want to see 3 fields, I go in the drop down, select 3 fields, I click around, go again to a list or even to the same list view. Now again, I'm having 10 fields in my display. I have to go again and select the 3 that I'm interested in. So there's no way to cache that configuration, at least for a session, if not across sessions. Is that something that you're
I think
planning
that's a
to?
very valid feedback, Soren. I mean, I can understand it will be frustrating every time to go back, come back to this list and again choose it. We'll definitely take this as a feedback, and we have to support it. We can clearly see the value in it. These fields are coming from the form that I'm sure you know. So these fields are coming from the form that we define, but still that is not sufficient because like you said, these are like 7 fields and you don't want to cut those. Rather, you want to retain the selection. You mentioned an important point, at least for the session. So because that's the max we could do, like, instead of saving it somewhere, at least for this session, till this browser is active, at least we should have this selection for this stereotype. We'll definitely take this as a feedback and we'll keep you updated on it.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so there are a number of questions over here. We will reach out to each one of you with a response to these queries. The recording of this session is also going to be available. And if you have any other question, please drop us an email as well. We really, really appreciate you taking time to attend the session. It's like 3 hours. It's not easy at all. I understand. So really appreciate all your time. Hope it was useful, and look forward to hearing your feedback and comments.
Nizam, great job. Really appreciate this. And did you say that you're going to try to do this periodically?
Yes, we are going to do it every month in the same time, like 3rd week. Yeah.
And how do you know the distribution list? Because I'm not sure how I got it. I think the invite got forwarded to me.
We are building it. We are sending it to all the
attendees,
contacts. Like, when we have a license sale, we have a key contact. We are sending it to them, then to the webinar attendees and to the summit attendees. But yeah, that's
okay. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Again, great job.
Thanks.
Hey, Nazim, is the next meeting, are they always going to be on Prolaborate, or will you ever just specifically get into Sparx?
We are doing a Prolaborate session because there was a request for it. But if there is if there is any comment, if you think we should do a particular type of a session, do drop us a note. Like, we are just we'll be more than happy to do a session on Sparx as well. Like, but we haven't got a request for it yet. One feedback that we got from the previous session was I emphasize a lot on meta model definition and getting started in a simple way. There was at least a few comments on a request for a webinar to do that. Maybe if that's going to be of some interest, we will. So we have occasional webinars coming as well. I think that's something that you may not have seen, but Sparx Systems has a webinars that we host on a regular basis as well. So there'll be Sparx sessions coming up every now and then in these webinars, which you can sign up for as well. So I'll just share you this link.
Again, great job promoting and sharing, holding this forum. Thank you, Nizam.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you everyone for the time. I really appreciate it. Pleasure to connect. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.